Hello, this is Frank of the 12 Gates, and today we're going to be talking about Christianity in China, but just really focusing on what is basically the underground movement, underground Christianity, the underground churches. Well, they don't like calling it underground churches, they call them house churches. And they're called house churches for a reason, because they can appear anywhere. They can be in a basement, they can be in a tower block, press a buzzer, go in, and they could be big enough for 600 people. And they can be in houses, in people's houses, They're in varying sizes, from, say, I don't know, probably a couple of people to a dozen to up to, 600, 800, maybe even bigger than that. Christianity, they reckon that Christianity, by 2015, there'll be more Christians in China than there will be in any other country in the world. And with the population that they've got, it's fully understandable. So, but what is actually happening in China now is what I'm seeing, especially with the house church movement, the underground Christian church, is this what we saw in the book of Acts, where basically the Spirit was moving. The conclusion I've come to, if you read the book of Acts, is Christianity was new then, wasn't it? And it seems the Spirit seems to work strongly in places where it hasn't been seen before, isn't it? And this is what's happening now in China. Christianity was suppressed in communist China, and now since the 70s it's been, it's made itself known now in China. Missionaries have gone over there, and the media is saying that recently there's been a lot of persecution in the churches, and that's why it's going underground. Other sources say that there's no persecution to speak of at all, but there is something going on over there, and certainly it is Book of Acts territory, especially when you read Book of Acts 2, where the 3,000 got converted, they got pricked in the hearts. If you read Acts 2, you will see what I'm talking about. This church movement, I think, is another thing. Just like the Raymond Linthrop, you see the guy with the God bus. There's a new movement starting up with these RV churches, very small at the moment. And also, if you watch another article I did on somebody called Agafia, she's quite well known now. I think it was RT actually did the video article on this, and she is living in the wilderness. Again, there was oppression at the time. She's I think an Orthodox Christian and Orthodox Catholic, or Orthodox Christian, one of the two. But she is living in the wilderness, and she was brought up with a family. They left what was basically the persecution. They were being forced to go into this new Orthodox church. They a lot of the things that they adopt, like hand signals and what they were supposed to read and all the rest of it, that the Bible was changed and all the rest of it, they didn't agree with it, so they fled. Yeah, that happened in Russia, going back a fair while ago. Now we're seeing the same thing in China, and what's happening in China, I think is going to happen sometime in the future. It's going to happen globally, I think. Christianity will become suppressed, and that's what I'm saying. If you go back to China, there seems to be two different views on this, whether there is persecution in China. But I've seen many headlines where crosses are being torn down from churches and that sort of thing. And the latest headline is this one, where basically any pictures of Jesus in churches have to be removed, and they have to have the picture of the president of China in these places instead of a picture of Jesus. That's the latest headline. That's a form of persecution, isn't it? But certainly this is going on in China, and I just thought I'd make you aware of it. There's many headlines, as you can see, that are coming up. But there seem to be, most of the headlines came out around about 2014, 2015, about a couple of years ago they seem to come out. But I suggest you check the article I've written, the two articles. There's one about China, the underground church movement in China, and secondly is this woman called Agafia, and she's living out in the middle of nowhere, and she's carrying on her Christian faith, the traditional Orthodox, as opposed to the new one that was forced upon everybody. I checked those two things out. That is what I see as the future. I think, if this revelation thing starts to happen, I think Christianity will probably go that way. It'll probably go underground. certainly RV, on the move, meeting up in people's houses. And what's that? It's going back to the book of Acts, isn't it? That's what they used to do, isn't it? They used to break bread together, have fellowship in each other's houses. They had sort of churches as well, where they had elders running them, but they had a number of elders, not just one person, wasn't it? But certainly it looks like things may have come round full circle. China is certainly one to keep an eye on. I did mention in the book of Revelation, there is a mention of a massive army of about 200 million people coming from the east. That could be a combination of, say, people from China, Japan and other Asian countries, but certainly China could put up an army that size. It is mentioned in Revelation. There are various views on that. Some people agree with it, some people don't. But I think China is certainly a country to keep an eye on. The fifth seal of Revelation mentions persecution, doesn't it? And I'm keeping an eye on what is actually happening with regards to persecution. There's persecution going on in the Middle East, which is the real hotbed for Christianity, isn't it? Because it's surrounded by Muslim nations. But I would say China is one to really keep an eye on the headlines and just see what's developing there. But removing pictures of Jesus, tearing down crosses, this sort of thing, the Chinese government are starting to realise now that it is a threat. The latest headline was, I think, a number of people got arrested in a house church, one of these underground churches. They're realising now that it's going underground, and they're starting to root them out that way. Maybe that's just a one-off, but maybe it could be the start of a beginning of a trend or something going on. But that is the way Christianity seems to be going. There are mega churches, just like in America. There's some massive churches there where they have Christians there, but that is sort of like the sanitized version of it, the institutional version. These underground house churches, they are, I would say, more like the book of Acts, more sort of evangelical in nature. I'll give you an example. I think I watched one video. There's a couple of Chinese girls crying there. I think it's about 6 minutes long. If you watch that video, the guy says that the minimum length for a service is 3 hours. They read the Bible for something like 3 hours. They just get somebody in to read the Bible. Sometimes they start at, say, 6 in the morning and they don't finish till 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 o'clock in the evening. But 12 hours is not unusual. And they try to get somebody to come in the following day and read it 12 hours straight again. Sometimes they go for the night. This sort of thing, this is what's going on. Yeah, and you see them, they're weeping, they're on their knees, and this sort of thing. The Spirit is working very, very strongly over in China at the moment. It's brand new sort of territory for Christianity. Not that new, but it is certainly, the Spirit is working strongly, just like it was back in the day when with the book of Acts, the same thing. So China is certainly something to keep an eye on. These headlines certainly testify to that fact, and it's something I'm watching very closely. Anyways, it's Frank with the 12 Gates. Just thought I'd share that with you before Christmas, and I shall catch you in the next video.